Welcome back to The Peaks, everyone. I'm so excited to have you on the show today because I'm here with my friend Daina Trout, the founder and CEO of Health-Ade. Daina, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Hello.
Before we dive in, can we start out with a brief intro into the impact your team's making at Health-Ade?
Sure. So as maybe you know, Health-Ade, we are a kombucha. Kombucha is fermented tea, so it's naturally rich in probiotics and healthy acids. Health-Ade started 4 years ago in my apartment closet that quickly turned into a full-on brewery. We got evicted and then had to move to a commercial kitchen, et cetera, et cetera. But no, it's a cool, I'd say an old school startup story, American startup story. And we've grown in a very grassroots way from that closet to pretty much be nationally represented across the U.S. And we just hired our, 56th employee yesterday. So it's like a real company now. I think one of our secrets is that we committed ourselves to making the best tasting and highest quality kombucha you can buy, real food, real kombucha, from day one, and we just have not wavered since that time. And that's proven to be very, I think, a very important reason why we've seen success to this point. I never want to forget that or let go of that.
There's so many areas that I want to dive in there, but I'm really glad you started out sharing, just a tiny bit of your story, because I'd even love to rewind a little bit more to how you guys came up with the idea for Health-Ade, because you definitely weren't planning on it.
No. I mean, the real story is that I was having, it was 2012, and I was feeling like I had a really good, strong job that, I was moving up the ladder, and it was like a good, normal Los Angeles life I lived. I'd go to the occasional Friday night dinner somewhere cool. I'd have summer vacation somewhere cool. I had a boyfriend and friends and time to work out and all this stuff. So I don't know what was wrong with me, but I felt a little bit unfulfilled for whatever reason. And there was like this voice that started telling me there was something bigger up ahead, a challenge, like I had a mark that I had to make. And I think anybody that's an entrepreneur can relate. Sure, Jenna, you can relate too. A voice, if you will, within. Forced me to get really introspective for a while, and then I reached out to my best friend and husband, or boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, Justin, Vanessa, and I shared with them what was going on, and they too were having the same feeling. So we started an entrepreneur club, and the point here was to figure out what this sort of business we wanted to create could be. We didn't have any money, so it had to be cheap, and we started thinking right away around hair loss products, because Justin worked for a marketing company at the time for hair loss prevention. Anyway, in a roundabout way, we basically started looking into hair loss products and found that in parts of the world, like in Tibet, they use the kombucha SCOBY, which is the culture used to make kombucha. They use it to regrow hair in parts of the world. So we were like, oh my gosh, that's so great. And side note, my background's in nutrition. I had been fermenting foods for a long time. I'd been fermenting kombucha. And we were actually sipping on my kombucha in the entrepreneur club. So we were like, oh my gosh, this is great. Daina knows how to make kombucha. Vanessa knows how to sell product, and Justin knows marketing of hair loss products. So there we go. We've got the business idea right there. We're going to put SCOBYs on people's hair and then call it a day. So I started tweaking my recipe so that it would make a really strong SCOBY, and we kind of started there, and I was counting Justin's hair loss because he was losing. Anyway, it was a whole thing. After like 3 weeks of counting hairs in the sink, I was like, I hate this project. And also, we noticed that the kombucha started to taste really good. Like each time I tweaked the recipe to make a stronger SCOBY, the recipe of the kombucha, like the resulting kombucha, was delicious. And we got to a point after like 4 weeks that Vanessa, Justin, and I were like, wow, this kombucha is like the best we've ever had, and it's way better than what's on the shelf. So Vanessa called it. I remember the day, and she was just like, "You guys, we have all this kombucha. Let's just sell it in the farmer's market, and we'll go from there." And so we showed up at the farmer's market 2 weeks later. We came up with the name, the label, the logo, everything in a weekend. Went to the farmer's market with like no idea. We had like a few 20s and like a table, and we sold out in an hour. And we were like, okay, let's try this again. And then the next week, there was a line literally down the street. It was like 20 people deep when we showed up. And we were like, this is interesting. And, looking back now, I wish I could say the rest was history. I mean, it's obviously been a lot of work. It's been the biggest challenge, the most exciting journey. And I will say that I definitely am fulfilled now. I feel totally like I'm exactly where I should be, and it's been a really cool journey.
I'm so happy you mentioned the farmers market, because you guys did that for a while, obviously with great success. And the first lesson we're going to talk about today for We Festival's Learn theme is don't be afraid to take a risk. Can you talk about when you made the decision to pursue Health-Ade full time?
Yes, because I would say it was our very first important milestone. So I remember it was the end of, so we had been doing farmers markets we started in March. We sold our first bottle in March of 2012. And the farmers markets are really tough, especially when you're doing that as a side project. So we had our, full-time jobs, and then on Sundays, weekends, nights, we were brewing kombucha, making it, labeling it, selling it. It was a lot of physical work, and we found ourselves somewhere around Thanksgiving of that year feeling like run ragged. We were like, we're not going to be able to continue this and be successful. In fact, kind of starting to do poorly at my job. And it's not like Health-Ade is blowing up at this stage. Like we found ourselves in a position that was like, okay, we can't continue like this anymore. So we have to either go for it or not do it at all, because this isn't a sustainable way to live. And I remember when we all decided that like we were going to do this, it was based entirely on, gut emotion. It was not like we had some business plan that like proved that we were going to be profitable in some amount of time. I had no savings account, Jenna. I literally had like $80 put aside. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's not like, I'm telling you, this was such a risk. And our parents were all like, what are you thinking? Like, no, don't do this. And all of our friends were like, no, don't do this, especially considering that other brands existed of kombucha out there, and that beverage is a very expensive category to get started in, like just manufacturing a beverage is expensive. And we didn't have any money. So, it was a very, very risky thing. I can't illustrate that enough. Like, we were really dumb to everyone else to take this risk, but we did it anyway. And I remember that first day coming to work on a Monday, right? Monday at 8:30, when I would usually be going to my other job. I remember being like, oh, can I swear on this?
You're allowed to swear.
I was like, oh, fuck.
And wait, the office,
was this no
the closet
paycheck.
Or your kitchen table?
Okay, so already at this point we had moved to the shared commercial kitchen. So
okay, got
it. We moved to the commercial kitchen once we realized like, okay, we're going to start like seriously selling in the farmers markets, etc. So we were in the shared commercial kitchen. I remember showing up to the kitchen at 8:30 and being like, okay, there's no paycheck coming this Friday or next Friday. Like, we got to seriously turn this on. And the three of us both felt that fire, and we were like, all right, how do we blow this up? How do we prove everybody wrong? This is the time. We said we want to make a mark. This is it. And because we didn't have the money, we didn't take the risk there. We had to take it all in sweat. So we devoted everything we had. I'm telling you, Jenna, every cell in my body was working toward this goal of essentially proving everyone wrong. That was the goal in the beginning. It's changed now. I don't need to impress anybody now. I've gotten over that, and now I have a new set of goals. But I do think that lesson of taking a risk is such an important one for people, especially other entrepreneurs. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs every week, and I feel like this is one that's really missing. People need to understand that in the beginning, there is some risk you have to make, a big risk, like a painful one, if you want to be successful. In general, is my lesson. And whether and that risk might be in dollars, if you have the investment, making that investment in dollars is a way that you can do it. And I've seen it done that way. That wasn't the way we did it, but it's got to be something. You're going to have to make something's got to pain you if you want to get the reward. And then, anyway, so that's a big lesson.
So we're going to dive into a lot of different areas there because I love that story. But so you get there in the morning, you realize, oh my God, we have to make this work. There's no money coming in. There's no choice. What were the first steps you took? Because I think people always talk about taking risks, but then they never say what they did after.
Yeah. It was like, how are we going to, like, immediately we started to realize that staying in the 3 dinky farmers markets we were in, or I think at that point we were in 7, but being in the 7 farmers market was not going to pay even my rent, let alone Justin's and Vanessa's. So it was literally like a very clear awakening that the amount of dollars we were going to need to come in for us to even just live and sustain this thing, forget even like dinner. Like at this point, I was comfortable living off of ramen and $7 a day, you know? But it wasn't even that. It was like, how do we sustain this? We realized quickly that we were going to need to be like selling some product. Like, seriously. So in the very first day, we just sat with a really big poster board and just wrote down how we were going to be able to. Oh, I remember what we did. We created what we called an extraordinary goal. And at the time, we were selling like 12 cases of farmers market. We were in 7 farmers markets. So let's say we were selling 100 cases. Let's say we were selling 100 cases a week. So let's say 400 cases a week. We decided, and we were totally out to lunch here, but we decided in 3 months, let's say we're selling 2,000 cases a month. So that's a really big jump, right? We didn't think about how that was going to happen, but we just set that goal. And then we were like, all right, how many accounts, how many stores do we need to be selling in? We realized quickly that farmers markets wasn't going to be the way that we were going to get there. And then, you know, how many people were we going to need to help us? And we were very resourceful. So like when it came to the stores, we realized we were going to have to open up like 100 stores in, you know, a month's time. There's no way the 3 of us could do that while still making the kombucha. So we were like, okay, we're going to need salespeople, but we don't have money to hire salespeople. So we had to get creative, and we were like, well, what if we paid them commission, you know, when we got paid for the orders that they were able to fulfill, we would give them a portion of that paycheck. So basically we just figured it out. And the risk was, I mean, I guess the action after we took the risk of quitting our jobs was create a plan, an extraordinary goal, and just go for it. Like no excuses. I mean, there are so many times that we could have been like, oh, we can't do that, or we can't do that, or maybe this isn't the right way to do it. But I think the very clear thing is that you do something, you act quickly, and you just go for it. Like, don't hesitate, because there are infinite ways to do it.
And for the extraordinary goal, was it sort of like do or die for you guys?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been like that ever since.
Did you guys meet the goal?
You know what? We didn't meet it in 3 months like we said we would. It was actually impossible because like the Scobies literally couldn't replicate enough. Anyway, but we didn't care. We got really close. And I think that's always been the way we've operated since. We realized that like making an extraordinary goal that's almost unreachable, as long as the three of us are like gung-ho about it, we get shoot for the stars and you hit the moon. You know what I mean?
And how did that work for you guys so like your extraordinary goal now, it's a lot harder to get more than 50 people on board with it when it sounds a little outlandish. How does it work with your team?
You're right. You're right. I think, well, first of all, Justin, Vanessa, and I always have an internal extraordinary goal that we don't always share with everyone else. But you're right. I mean, I think it has to be attainable. I think the point is that it's extraordinary. So it's not an ordinary goal. So the way we actually approach the project when we define what the goal is we literally write down all the things that would be ordinary for Health-Ade next year. So like, let's say like right now we're starting to do strategy planning for 2017. So I sit down and I write, we as a team, all of the department leads sit down and we say, okay, what's expected of us next year? We've been growing 400% every year. What's expected? And we write down all the things. And then I put on top and I say, okay, that's ordinary. That's what people expect of us. That's sort of like a shoo-in. We know we can do that because we're basically just saying, okay, we grew 400% last year. We could easily grow another 200%. We could easily launch 2 more Whole Foods regions. We could, these kinds of things are ordinary. And then I move them to a space of extraordinary. And I say, okay, well, what would be unexpected? And then we start listing some things. And I think we all get a little bit like inspired by that because we all are here to make a mark. Like those are the kinds of people we hire. So once you get into that creative space of thinking beyond the ordinary, it's kind of exciting and there's a momentum there. We end up circling the things that we think we can do. Like it's extraordinary, but we think we can do it. And then from there sort of births the vision of 2017 and then the strategy. And next thing you know, we've created a full plan on how to get there. So it is attainable. It has to be attainable. You're right. It's not outlandish, but it's outside the realm of what you would traditionally think would be a normal next step.
I love
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And a part of that obviously is your growth, which leads us into that second lesson that I'm really, really excited to chat about. You mentioned before that when you guys started, you wanted to be the best and the highest quality kombucha. Obviously, that has remained the same and is a huge reason for where you are today, but you've evolved to stand for so much more. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the second lesson is stand for something. And I think at every stage that we've been in, like looking back, I realized part of that success has to be attributed to the fact that we chose to actually stand for it. Like we defined and identified what we wanted to stand for, but that's just talking the talk. The real success in sort of manifesting that comes with walking the walk. And I look back and I see that it was one thing to say, oh, we're here to be the best tasting and highest quality kombucha. It was another to actually have to like fight the investors on it and like fight, people out there that were trying to, their intentions were positive. They were trying to make us more efficient or bring our cost of goods down. I mean, in the beginning, we were charging $5 a bottle, but it was costing us $10 a bottle to make. So, I mean, it wasn't smart, right? So, I mean, the investors were right to be like, okay, we're going to have to find some ways to like cut your costs. And, but because we stood for quality, we found other ways to cut costs. Like, how do we improve efficiencies? Like, how do we get people to pick up these jars faster? Because I don't want to change that we're doing it in these jars, but how do we? And so when we got into those creative spaces was where we came up with some great solutions. And now it's our competitive advantage. Now I've figured out how to make kombucha in 2.5 gallon jars super efficiently. But like, it's only because we actually stood for that, right? We chose to stand for that and not listen or cave And let me tell you, it was hard sometimes. You know, like working with cold pressed juice is a pain in the butt. It is really difficult. With produce, it would be so much easier and cheaper to use pasteurized, concentrates like that get shipped to me in bulk, and I don't even have to refrigerate them, and I can just, versus a product that tastes different in August versus June, because in August it's the summer, it's like it is really difficult to work with. But at the end of the day, I know that my customer cares about that. And so if I forget what we stand for, I think I lose my customer or my customer's loyalty. So I want to be as loyal to what we stand for as I expect my customer to be loyal to me. And so that's been a very important lesson. So it's not just identifying what you stand for, but actually when push comes to shove, you got to stand for it. So how that's evolved over time, and yes, we still very much stand for being the best tasting, highest quality, although now it's not difficult to stand for it because we've proven to our investors and proven to the community around us that that's what sells Health-Ade. So they're actually all for it now. So it's kind of funny. It's not like a fight anymore. They get it. But now we're in a situation right now where fermented foods are making a serious comeback into the world of food. And right now the shelves, the commercial shelves, are filled with a lot of what I would call not quite food. It's food, but it's a far cry from what it looked like when it came out of the ground. And I think the intention of processed food maybe was a good one. We needed more options. People were on the go. They needed convenient food that they could buy and also take care of their families and go to work. I think the intention was good, but we didn't think about the consequences of everything. So here we are today in 2016. There's a lot of health problems out there. We're finding what the downside is of pasteurization. There's an upside, of course. We have less foodborne illness, but there's a downside too. It kills everything. And what's kind of cool is this new food movement is coming forth, and it's a middle ground between the two. It's like safe, but it's also real. And the only problem right now with this new sort of food culture is that the laws that are in place that have been developed over the last 10, 15 years are not congenial to this new food space. It's like they're black and white laws that are very much set in space or set in place for really pasteurized food. And so these fermented live foods that a little bit evolve over time are having difficulty playing in the mainstream. It's easy in the farmers markets and it's easy if you're just a regional player, but when you're talking you want to be nationally distributed, Costco, whatever, because personally, Jenna, I believe that we deserve this. We deserve, no matter where we go, to be able to access real food. It's time. We're 2016. It's time. You know what I mean? So I don't think we should have to settle anymore for, processed food if we don't want it.
I'm not going to get on the process train because you and I could go for so long on that, but it's something that we both, deeply believe in, the power of real food. Now you guys, like you're saying, are standing for much bigger things.
You're long story short, right.
You're going to DC. Can you tell us about that, and at what point you kind of had that confidence shift of hey, we're no longer a baby brand. We're here to make a national difference?
Yeah, I mean, I just, it all happened when I just realized that up ahead, I'm foreseeing a storm. I foresee that the more national we get, the bigger we get, even though I figured out how to make my food efficient and high quality, I'm realizing that the further we get, the more pushback I get on this product being alive, this product being unpasteurized. even though I've been able to prove scientifically over and over that it is a safe product, and not just safe, but it's safe in a different way that people are used to. Like, it's exactly the opposite of pasteurization. We're actually relying on nature to produce something that's protective, and it's a really foreign concept to the people out there that are making the laws right now, because it's okay. They don't know. This is kind of new, even though it's technically ancient. It's new. And so I just foresee that the laws that as they are right now are not there for us. And so if my customer and me is passionate about real food on the commercial space, well, the laws are going to have to change. And so I'm already putting in people and resources, and I'm starting to have the dialogues because I know how long things will take, just to be at the table when these laws. So it's not like there's anything specific right now that's like, rah, we need to fight this now. It's more that it's like, I see it. And like, so we're already having conversations with like governmental agencies being like, hey, we make real kombucha. And by the way, the customer really likes that about us. So like, make sure you talk to us before you make any decisions here, And then I'm trying to connect with other companies that are doing the same thing in their categories so that we're all kind of like a powerful, unified voice saying our customer today and the customer tomorrow wants this. So how do we make sure this doesn't go away? I'm still figuring out how to stand for it, to be honest, but I know that's the next thing we're standing for.
Could you have predicted at all that we would be talking about that specifically when you started in 2012?
Hell no. Let me tell you something. My husband is going to Washington, D.C. We have a director of legislative and political affairs. I didn't know. I had no idea. And we're sending both my husband, so both Justin and Amelia, who is our director of nutrition and legislative affairs, to Washington, D.C. To start talking with legislators. No idea. I would have probably stayed very clear of legislators in general. I'm not like a political person. I'm Canadian. So I would never have guessed it.
I love that. And the way that it wraps up with the third lesson that is just so crucial to the Health-Ade mission, and I've shared with you before, it's really impacted me too, is follow your gut. Can you tell us how that evolved? Because when we first met, I thought it was something so clever with probiotics in your stomach and was pleasantly surprised that there's much more to it than that.
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't by design more than that. When we created it, it was exactly like you said, follow your gut to kombucha, but it's become much more than that. So basically last year, sometime at the end of last year, I realized, and this is again just me tapping into what was coming up. And what was coming up was, we need to know why we exist. Like, we understand what it is we do. We make the best tasting, highest quality kombucha, great. But why? Like, why do we exist? And I had to marinate on that for a while. And I got Justin and Vanessa together and we did a little bit of like a creative brainstorming for a couple of days. We went up to Santa Barbara and we like tried to think about what it is that inspires us and inspires our employees and then inspires our customers. Like, why do they really buy Health-Ade? And why will they continue to buy Health-Ade if let's say somebody else started making kombucha exactly like we did. Let's just say somebody came out and started making it in glass jars, using cold pressed juice. They did all the things. Why would they pick Health-Ade? And that's what I was trying to identify. And what was really interesting is after this long creative brainstorming of like 2 days, we came back to follow your gut. And we realized that like that message to inspire others to trust in themselves is what we wanted to inspire, is what we wanted. That's the legacy we want to leave, is if we can somehow make an impact on the world or even on just one person, that they will in turn look inward for the answer a little bit more, then that is going to make us really proud. And we felt like we could really get behind that. And then also, by the way, it's been a huge lesson for us over the business of 4 years. When I look back and I think about the mistakes that I've made or the things I would do differently, I realized that I always knew, or I at least had the feeling within that it wasn't the right move, or it was the right move, and I chose not to follow it. And I can look back and say, gosh, if I had just listened to my innards a little bit more at that time, I think I could have. And I really try to tap into that gut. It's not that it's always right, but it always gets me to the right place. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
Yeah, and the more I can get people to have a conversation about how they're feeling, I just feel like it's a world of opportunity. That's all. I mean, imagine if we had a world where people really like tapped into their true selves. It would be a really cool place. So, that's how it's evolved over time. It started as like a product-based, maybe functional-based tagline, and now it's like, it feels like a movement to me. And like, I'm really excited to see where this comes, how this gets cultivated out there. I mean, we just identified it less than a year ago. So now I'm like figuring out, how do we get this out there? And I think part of it is the legislative movement that we're talking about. Part of it is just as I go, trusting that, like, I know it's okay. I don't have the experience. Yes, it's okay. I didn't come from a family of like beverage entrepreneurs. It's okay. The reality is I got just as many hours in the day as Beyonce. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's true. And I love that you shared that it might not lead you to the right answer right away. Like, you're not just going to be like, follow my gut, and then ding, 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 like you have it. But it'll get you there eventually. Before we go, Daina, can you just share an example of a time when you followed your gut and it was really beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, sure. Like, and it sort of sticks with stand for something. I think back in the day when we were figuring out how to continue to make Health-Ade in the highest quality way, but not make it for $10 a bottle, there were things that people wanted to change, like the fact that we made it in 2.5 gallon jars.
Which is just still wild that you guys do that. It's awesome.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, you could view that, or you could have viewed that back then as sort of green, naive, maybe it was dumb. And people would actually say those things to me, right? Like, people would actually say, experienced people would say, like, okay, like, you're just kind of naive, little girl, I think somebody called me once. So, it's easy to like fall victim to that and kind of be like, oh, right, I'm an idiot, or maybe I should change that, or but again, because I knew that our success relied on our ability to stand for being a higher quality kombucha, when I chose to follow my gut and put my foot down and say, no, this is how we're doing it, and I'm going to figure out another way to prove you wrong, and we did. I look back and I'm like, well, thank God we did that, because had we moved to a different vessel, honestly, I think we would be making a very different kombucha, and that I wouldn't be in front of you today. And so that's just one example back in the day, but it happens all the time. Like, especially now as we get bigger, I get connected with people that have a lot of experience, and they're great and they offer insights. And I'm not saying you don't listen to people that have experience, but I think the important distinction is you listen to them and then you decide yourself, right? So I hear all the time people tell me what I should do or what people have done in the past. And I have to tap in and be like, okay, but what do I think? What is going to be the right thing for Health-Ade? And just, it repeatedly happens that it's not always the thing that the experienced people say. It's not.
I love that. And it makes me so happy that we're able to wrap up with that, because it's so important, and it goes for life and for work and really anything. I'm so grateful that we got to have you on today, Daina. For everyone
Sure.
listening in, what's the best way for them to stay up to date with Health-Ade and start trying the kombucha and, get on the follow your gut train?
Well, listen, kombucha is available probably in your local store down the street, and I highly suggest getting into it because it tastes great and it's easy. But if you want to learn more about us, we're actually going to be launching a blog on our website in the next month or so, where we'll be detailing our endeavor out there in Washington and what we need from our consumers as far as support goes. So yeah, just check out healthade.com regularly, and I'll be sure, Jenna, to connect with you also when we have like a material update or whatever. But in general, I think the best way they can support the movement is just to find a way to follow their gut in their own respective way today or perhaps tomorrow, because I think that's the impact I really want to make.
I love it. Thank you so much.